welcome to the channel and welcome to the first video here. This is player Dandy and today we'll be looking at a deck on the Pokemon trading card game online, and this is the Zoroark Maxie's build for Fates Collide Standard. Now if you've been playing the game or been keeping up with the latest decks and news and all that stuff, this deck should be quite familiar to you, as it's been seeing a lot of success since the state championships just a couple months ago in its breakpoint version. Now, for if you're a newer player or you're looking into a deck that more competitive deck, then this is definitely one I think you should check out, as it has a lot of interesting decisions you can make, and its damage output and its setup abilities are very powerful. So without further ado, let's get on to the deck list. Now the main pillar of this deck is this Zoroark right here, with the powerful stand-in ability to enter the active spot either as an attacker or as a way to retreat using Float Stone into a different active Pokemon of your choice. And also it has the powerful Mind Jack attack, which does 10 plus 30 damage more for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Now it may not seem like a lot, but a lot of decks sometimes need to fill up their bench to get their game plan going, or otherwise set up with, say, multiple Shaymin-EX, and this is where Mind Jack can really punish them. It also has a nice resistance in Psychic, where it could tank some hits from Trevenants or Trevenant breaks, which are quite popular right now, and even maybe some Alakazams or Mew-based decks once Fates Collide becomes tournament legal. Its fighting weakness is something to perhaps be worried about, so there's something to look out for there, especially with Zoroark coming out and Carbink. To evolve into Zoroark, we have this Zorua. We're using this Moonless Madness one, where it can leave your opponent's active Pokemon confused. There's another one in Standard that has like a cute bow, but this Moonless Madness has a better attack, as it could stall, as we've seen if you're watching some recent the more recent UK National stream. There was a point in Top Cut where the Dark player had to use this confusion effect on a Trevenant break deck and actually bought them some time, so sometimes you'll have to use that kind of attack. Also, Dark Edge, another situational attack, but you could use it against decks that are weak to Dark, like Trevenant. And finally, we run a 3-3 line, and we also run a single Zoroark break with this foul play attack, where you could copy one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attack and use it as its own. And this attack can come in handy in several different matchups, including I'm going to mention Trevenant break again because it's such a relevant and popular deck in Standard right now, that you could copy Tree Slam and knock out a Trevenant and also deal damage to their bench to set up for knockouts later on. And also has 1/4 HP, which is pretty high for a non-EX, and it could also withstand a lot of attacks from more non-EXs. Let's see, next up we have two of this non-EX Yveltal with the Oblivion Wing attack. Sometimes it's a good lead-off Pokemon, where if you're going second, you could use Oblivion Wing, and all it takes is some discarding outlets with, say, Battle Compressor or Ultra Ball, to get some dark in your graveyard and start building up your bench from there. It also has the Darkness Blade attack, which does 100 for 3 energy, and a flip a coin of tails. This Pokemon can attack during your next turn. Now, it's probably one of these game-winning attacks where you could attach a Muscle Band to give it 20 more damage, that's 120, and you target a Shaymin on the bench and knock it out for the last 2 prizes. Continuing on to the Yveltal line, we have this other non-EX Yveltal, which has this Fright Night ability, that as long as it's your active Pokemon, it turns off all the tools that are in play. And this is relevant in a couple matchups, particularly in Night March, where their fighting Fury Belts would have no effect, and you could effectively one-shot all their attacking Pokemon. And also in decks that run Mega decks that run Spirit Link, so you could stall them for a turn because they'll have to Mega Evolve as if they didn't have the Spirit Link in play. And even in Trevenant matchups, I found that sometimes the situation arises where your opponent has a weakness policy on their Trevenant break, but if you send this Yveltal up and you're lucky enough to have it powered up, you could pitch back Spirit. It won't knock it out, but it will still hit it for weakness. And we run a single Yveltal-EX. Previously to this build, or breakpoint, Yveltal-EX was the main attacker in pretty much every dark deck, but since Zoroark came out, we've seen a shift from the EX to non-EX focused attackers, as while Yveltal is still not as popular, Yveltal-EX, it still has this Evil Ball attack that could potentially rack up insane amounts of damage and punish your opponents for stacking too much energy on a single Pokemon. And also Y-Cyclone hits for some magic numbers. Either you could two-shot something with 180 HP, or with a Muscle Band, you could hit 110 and knock out a Shaymin-EX. And speaking of Shaymin-EX, we run a 2-of line of this Shaymin. Shaymin has such a powerful setup ability that helps you draw cards without using your supporter for the turn. And it also has a pretty good attack in Sky Return. It doesn't seem that good, 30 damage for two colorless energies, but if you attach a double colorless to it, you could preserve it, Sky Return, and you also bring it off the table for any prize liability it may have. And also hits for the 30 is a magic number against Pokemon like Joltik, which have 30 HP. And we run this single tech Druddigon. This is pretty much a flex spot, but it's in pretty much the stock list for this kind of Zoroark type deck, and it's used for this revenge attack. And if your opponent knocked out one of your Pokemon the last turn, it does 20 damage plus 70 more. So this hits for 90 damage normally, but if you use a Muscle Band, it'll again hit that magic number of 110, where you could bring up your opponent's Shaymins and take 2 prizes from there. And pretty much this deck relies on favorable prize trades and 2-for-1s to win the game. And to round out our Pokemon, we have a single Gallade. Now this is the other half of the deck in the Maxie's portion, where we use this trainer Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick to bring out this Gallade. And this Gallade has several things going for it. First of all, its premonition ability lets you look at the top 5, so you're scrying for 5, and you could put them back in any order. Really helps you smooth out your draws, gives you that consistency you may need in matchups like Trevenant Break, where you're locked down on items, or Vespiquen Vileplume. And also has this very powerful attack in Sensitive Blade, where if you played a supporter for the turn, you deal 70 more damage. So it's 130 damage, which is a lot, and can knock out a lot of non-EX Pokemon, and even EXs that have weakness to it, especially Jolteon EX or other electric Pokemon that otherwise threaten your Yveltal line, like Mega Manectric. And 150 HP for non-EX is a lot, so it's a tough number to hit for a single one shot, so it's quite a good tank too. So that rounds out the Pokemon. Let's go into the items. We run 3 Battle Compressors, a very powerful deck in these turn 1 Maxies or dark based decks that lets you put any useless cards or your Maxie's combo of one Gallade and one Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick into the discard pile, and also any dark energies you want to power up your dark Pokemon, and it's even some choice supporters in your discard that you want to use for with a VS Seeker or a Puzzle of Time. And speaking of Puzzle of Time, we run 4 of. Originally I didn't run the Puzzle of Times, but after thinking about how powerful or how much needed the double colorless and other supporters are needed in this deck, I decided to put in the full 4 to bring them back in especially the late game, where once resources are low, you could bring those back and finish out the game. We also run 1 target whistle. As I mentioned earlier, this deck relies on a favorable prize trades to win the game, and using this target whistle against weak Pokemon or low HP Pokemon like Shaymin-EX really helps in this aspect, and also works well with the Mind Jack ability. Sometimes you may not have enough damage with Mind Jack if your opponent's playing around it, or you've knocked out a lot of their Pokemon, so using this target whistle to bolster up the damage really helps in quite often. Next we run 4 Trainers Mail, again another consistency booster and a great card again in these turn 1 Maxie's decks where you want to get your hand down to 1, and sometimes whiffing the Trainers Mail is something you need to do to thin out your hand to do that. And again, more consistency, we run 4 Ultra Balls. Ultra Ball pretty much gets anything we want it from any Pokemon we want from the deck. It helps thin our hand to draw more for Shaymin-EX. It helps us pitch useless cards like Gallade that's in our hand, and it's overall something we need to continue evolving into our Zoras into Zoroarks. Moving on, we have 4 VS Seekers. VS Seeker is such a powerful item that's pretty much used in 4s in nearly every competitive deck. Just the ability to return a supporter card from your discard pile really makes it worth it to run a full 4 line. And going on to tools really quick to finish out our items, we run 2 Float Stones. This combos well again with the stand-in ability. You could stand in, and if Zoroark has the Float Stone on, you could just simply retreat to another Pokemon that gets out status effects and all that from the active. And we also run 2 Muscle Bands. Oh, 3. Guess we run 3. We run 3 Muscle Bands. Tacking on that 20 damage really enables us to hit those specific numbers for one-shots against Pokemon like Shaymin-EX. So that does it for the items. Now let's go quickly over the supporters. We run a single Ace Trainer. Now this deck, a common situation is Zorua would be our starting Pokemon, and it only has 60 HP, and sometimes we can't manage to evolve it by the time our opponent goes first. So having this as a follow-up to their attack really could set them back, since it brings down their hand size down to 3, and it also gives us a fresh hand of 6. We run a single Giovanni Scheme. This is mostly used to add this 20 more damage, especially in the late game where if we're mind jacking and our opponent stops benching things. This could help us with the math to one-shot certain Pokemon. And the draw 5 isn't that bad in some situations, especially when you're desperate for hand size. Next up, we run a single Hex Maniac, and Hex Maniac is one of the most disruptive supporters in the entire game. And just using this turn 1 against decks that run like a heavy 4 line of Shaymin-EX, it really stalls them from going off, especially in the Night March matchup or even Vileplume. It could stop them from having those really explosive turn 1s. And it's also good against decks like Trevenant and Vileplume, where if you play the Hex Maniac, you have 1 turn to use all the item cards that you can possibly use, and potentially break open the game from that. We run one Lysandre. Lysandre, I've considered running two, but I don't really know what to cut. But Lysandre, regardless, it's a really powerful card, especially in this deck where you need to hit sometimes those Shaymins or other damage Pokemon on the bench that you want to take care of. And that's why it's running two sometimes if it's prized. That then you'll have if you run two, then you'll have at least an increased chance that you'll have one in your deck for sure as the game at the beginning of the game. And we have this single Maxie Hidden Ball trick, and I've been mentioning this earlier, but this basically you can only play it if it's the last card in your hand, and if you play it, you could put a fighting Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench, then draw up to 5 cards, or draw 5 cards. Excuse me. Now this Maxie's is used. Notice how it says a Pokemon, not like a basic Pokemon. So you could bring up these evolved Pokemon like Gallade to your bench, and it really gives you an edge in terms of for so many matchups and so many consistency purposes, that it's really helped dark decks come back from its sort of slump in the end of last season and the beginning of this season, really, as it covers this fighting typing really offers a counter to those Pokemon that hit for lightning weakness, and it's also good against Zoroarks. Next up, we run one N. N was reprinted in Fates Collide, so now it was missed for a while in Standard, but since it was reprinted now, N, if you've been playing the game for a while, you know how powerful N is. It just has the ability to refresh your hand in the early game if you don't want to ditch certain resources in your hand with the Sycamore or something, and also late game it offers that powerful end your opponent down to a single card in their hand, which could totally give you so much comeback potential. Next up, we run 3 Professor Sycamore. We run 3 of just to get in our opening hands if we seem to be drawing dead or don't have any plays in that hand. Just the ability to refresh your hand is something that can't be overlooked. And finally, run a single Xerosic. I've seen some lists run this Xerosic, but in my playtesting, I found that it's really good in certain matchups and against the decks that say run Focus Sash or run weakness policies or any other pesky item cards, Mega Decks, Spirit Links, but also the ability to discard special energies could help a lot. Like if your opponent has powered up Night Marcher on the bench with a double colorless, you could use this Xerosic to take it off of their bench one, and also you could also knock out, and if you had the opportunity to knock out their active Night Marcher, then that just sets them back so many turns. And finally, to round out the trainers, we have this single Reverse Valley. For this deck, we use this the dark side, which increases damage from our dark Pokemon by 10. Now, this may not seem like a lot, but it actually is very relevant in certain matchups where, especially in the mirror match, sometimes you could Darkness Blade with a Muscle Band, that's 120, and then if you have this Reverse Valley, that's 130. So that helps you knock out stuff like opposing non-EX Yveltals, which have 130. Or sometimes your math is slightly off with this Zoroark's Mind Jack. That extra 10 damage really helps a lot. And it's also important to have a single counter stadium. I've had some matches where bumping my opponent's Reverse Valley, or not Reverse Valley, playing our Reverse Valley to stop them from playing theirs, or playing Reverse Valley to bump their Dimension Valleys. And if that's their last one, then it becomes increasingly difficult for Save the Night March players to power up their Pumpkaboos to attack. And our energy base, pretty simple. 4 double colorless, probably the lifeblood of this deck, such a precious resource, and usually a Puzzle of Time target, and 5 Dark Energies. May seem like a low count, but really we spend a lot of time attaching double colors anyway, and if we don't have double colors, then having a Battle Compressor send a couple of these darks into the discard and attaching to this Yveltal helps accelerate, keeps our dark energies in play. So there you have it, guys. This is the Zoroark Maxie's list I'm playing. It's pretty standard stock list, but there's some spots some spots that are pretty flexible. Like I said, there's this Druddigon you could drop, or this Xerosic. I think Giovanni's borderline, but it depends on the metagame and the matchups you run into. Ace Trainer could be cut. You could add more N's, add a second Maxie's, Lysandre, 4th Battle Compressor, another Stadium if you wish. Silent Lab's a good stadium to consider. So yeah, I like playing this deck because there's a lot of decisions to be made in which attacker you should use, premonition, which cards to stack, and your Battle Compressors are extremely important, knowing which supporters which you think you could use in the upcoming turns, which cards you want to get rid of, all that stuff. So I really like playing it. There's a lot of decisions to be made, a lot of misplays to be had, and it's just a really fun deck. So I'm going to show you guys a few matches with it in the upcoming videos, and I'll see you guys there. Thanks for watching.